One of my very favorite things about painting is that for just a moment, for one little scene, you get to make the world look however you want it to look. And I happen to really like when the world looks really dramatic. I have this really gorgeous apple tree in my backyard, and the other evening I was sitting outside and the tree was beautifully backlit, and I was like, I have to paint this. So that's what I'm going to do today. However, I've been practicing being a little bit more free with my paintings. I tend to overthink them a little bit, so today I'm going to set myself a time limit. I'm going with an hour to start, and I'm going to see how much I can get done in an hour. As I mentioned, I really love dramatic lighting, and for me that generally means that I want the background to be really dark. So I'm starting with this really dark blue background, and then I'm just gonna paint in the big blocks of color that I see. I'm not gonna start with a sketch on this one because I'm trying to paint quickly, and for me a sketch tends to slow me down a little bit. Remember when I said I was gonna do a dark blue background? I changed my mind, and I'm actually gonna do black because this is something that happens to me all the time, actually. I'll start with a different color, and I almost always change it back to black. I just really love a black background in my paintings. But then I'm like, no, I should be creative, and I should try to mix it up and try something new this time. But you know what? If I keep coming back to it, maybe this is just the era of black background paintings, and I should just embrace it. So for this painting, I'm going with the black background. This is like a little bit interesting because I am both hurrying and I'm also trying to change the color scheme a little bit. And so I'm trying to figure out like, how do I make it look convincing that it is night since the background is so dark, but also I want it to still be convincing that there would be light coming from behind. So that's kind of what I'm playing with in my head right now and kind of just experimenting. A lot of oil and acrylic painters will stand back really far from their canvas so that they can see just like the impressions of their painting, so that they're not over analyzing the tiny little details. They can see from afar like if what they've done portrays the right values and the right textures and things. So that's kind of what I'm doing here when I zoom out with both my reference photo and my canvas. I'm trying to pretend like I don't know what I'm painting and just block in the colors and see if I can get the values correct. I'm starting to realize that my colors aren't quite working. The background is completely black, but the flowers are still fairly saturated in terms of color. So I'm doing a quick Google search to see the color of objects when they're completely backlit and the background is completely black. Just to kind of give me an idea of like how saturated I should make the colors. And there's little varying results based off of the object. But I liked the look of that first duck that I pulled up. It was just completely black with just a light ring of light around it. So I'm kind of going to try to go for that a little bit more. So I'm making my flowers less saturated. I'm making them just darker and more gray, because I think that better portrays the way that when it's dark outside, you can't see the saturation of colors. Everything looks a little bit more gray. So I'm going for that effect while keeping the petals that are backlit really bright, as well as the leaves that are in the background more bright as well. I'm having a lot of fun with this piece so far. I'm really enjoying just having the chance to look really closely at all of these flowers and the way that they lay on top of each other and the way the light interacts with them. These apple trees have been in my yard as long as I've lived in my house. And I used to just sit under them when they were just absolutely tiny and try and get a little bit of shade to read or something. And they've gotten way bigger, which is really sad. Oh, and look, there's my hour timer. I am just like not even close to done with this piece. So that was cute of me to think that I could do it in an hour. So I'm resetting my timer. I'm going to try for one more hour. We'll see how 2 hours goes. It'll still be kind of quick for me. Actually, it'll be really quick for me, but maybe not quite as unrealistic as an hour was. So I'm picking up the pace a little bit and continuing onward with this piece. As you may have noticed, I got all of the kind of general colors laid in sort of a just kind of like paintbrush, smudgy kind of way. Now I'm coming in and adding actual flower shapes on top. But since they're all in a cluster, I'm not doing perfect little 5-petal flowers. I'm doing like just a bunch of petal shapes kind of spread throughout. Some individual actual flowers, but mainly just petal shapes. And then I'm adding kind of this glowy sort of effect from behind. I'm really just trying to reinforce that backlit effect. And so my thought with those rays is that it shows like a direction where the light is coming from. It's kind of like funneling out from behind the flower. So I think it looks like the light is shining directly on the back of the flower, and then the rays are kind of scattering out from there. I mentioned earlier that I was adding all of those petal shapes, but you'll notice that for the background branches, I'm not adding any of those at all. I'm keeping it just the smudgy paint stroke, kind of generally just a dots sort of shape, because I want those to stay a little bit more blurry and a little bit more vague. So, a funny story with crabapple trees, which is what these are. At one point, I lived in an apartment in Colorado Springs, and we had these crabapple trees outside of our apartment, and they started producing fruit, and we noticed all the fruit was just falling on the ground and getting wasted. And so one night, my partner and I went out like really late when it was dark and gathered up all of the fruit off of the tree that we could reach. And then we processed it and turned it into crabapple jam. And we actually still have some crabapple jam that we use on PB&Js and stuff. So kind of silly. It turns out that crab apples, they're a little tart if you eat them plain, but if you mix them with a whole bunch of sugar, they're quite delicious. So would recommend if you have access to some crab apples. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting close to my 2-hour mark, so I'm trying to focus on the details that matter the most, especially outside edges. I think that that's where your eye is drawn specifically, so I want those to look a little bit more touched up, have a little bit of more natural shapes around the edges, more of those like light dramatic. And yep, I was right. There's my time. I'd said I was gonna only do 2 hours. I gotta stick to it. However, there's just one more little spot that I think needs some slight touch up, so I'm gonna cheat just a little bit and add just a tiny bit to that one little spot. But otherwise, I'm gonna call it done. So I feel excited about this piece. I can definitely see plenty of imperfections, things that I maybe would have touched up if I had a little bit more time, but I like practicing being okay with those mistakes and just appreciating it for what it is. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.